There comes a moment in every life when the mirror no longer reflects who you thought you were. The plans that once felt certain begin to crumble. The dreams that once burned bright begin to fade, and somewhere deep inside, a voice begins to whisper, "This is not the end. This is the beginning." You look around and realize that the pieces of your old self are scattered everywhere. The person you tried to be, the expectations you carried, the versions of yourself that were built to please others. And standing there, amid the quiet ruins of everything familiar, you are faced with a question that can no longer be avoided: who am I now? It is in this silence, this raw and uncertain space, that the true rebuilding begins. Not the rebuilding of the outer world, but of the inner one. The mind, the heart, the soul. You begin to sense that every fall, every heartbreak, every failure was not meant to destroy you, but to strip away everything false, everything borrowed, until only the truth of who you are remains. This speech is not about starting over. It is about awakening, about reclaiming the power to rebuild yourself from within. Begin in moments of clarity or confidence. It begins in the collapse. When everything that once defined you starts to crumble. Your beliefs, relationships, ambitions, or even your sense of worth. It feels like an ending. Yet within that ending lies the hidden seed of transformation. The collapse before renewal is not a punishment from life, but a necessary dismantling of what has grown false, rigid, or outdated within you. The structures of your personality that once provided stability eventually become cages if you cling to them for too long. Life, in its silent wisdom, breaks those cages apart. When the old self begins to die, there is confusion. You find yourself standing amid the ruins of your former identity, uncertain of what remains real. The roles you played no longer fit. The goals you once chased no longer fulfill. There is an ache that feels almost unbearable, as if you are losing everything. But what you are losing is illusion, the fragile shell that you mistook for wholeness. The collapse exposes what has always been hidden beneath the surface, the raw, unpolished essence of who you truly are. The destruction of the old self feels violent because it forces you to confront truths you have avoided. Every shattered expectation reveals the gap between what you imagined life should be and what it actually is. Every disappointment becomes a mirror reflecting the parts of yourself you refuse to see. It is a disorienting time, when meaning itself seems to vanish. You might feel as though life has turned against you, but in reality, life is turning you toward yourself. What feels like chaos is actually the reordering of your inner world. To rebuild, the old foundations must first collapse. You cannot construct something new on ground that is already occupied by fragments of the past. The disintegration of your old identity creates a space, a painful, empty space. But it is only within that emptiness that rebirth can occur. This emptiness is sacred. It is a cleansing fire that strips away what is false, leaving you raw but ready for renewal. The ego resists this process because it clings to familiarity. It does not want to die. Yet, the death of the ego's illusions is what makes transformation possible. In the middle of this collapse, there is a strange paradox. The more you try to hold on, the more everything slips away. The moment you surrender, truly surrender, the rebuilding begins. Surrender does not mean giving up. It means accepting that the old version of you cannot continue to lead the way. It means trusting the deeper intelligence within your suffering. This intelligence knows how to rebuild you from the inside out. Just as nature allows seasons of decay before spring's renewal, the human soul follows the same pattern. What falls apart in winter is not lost. It is preparing the ground for something stronger to emerge. Pain is not the enemy of growth. It is the force that pushes you toward it. The darkness that surrounds you in moments of collapse is the womb of transformation. You are being unmade so that you can be remade. You are being stripped of everything false so that what remains is real. And though it may feel like you are losing control, in truth, you are regaining alignment with the deeper rhythm of your being. The collapse before renewal is an initiation, a passage that every evolving soul must walk through. When you finally rise again, you realize that the collapse was not the end, but the beginning of a deeper journey. The pieces that broke were never meant to last. They were only scaffolding for your growth. What emerges after the fall is not a return to who you were, but the birth of who you were always meant to become. The self that rises from the ashes carries a wisdom that can only be forged through fire. It is stronger, truer, and infinitely more alive. The collapse before renewal is the silent hand of transformation, the moment when life, in its mysterious mercy, breaks you open only to reveal the truth that was waiting within you all along. To rebuild yourself, you must begin with a journey inward, into the silent corridors of your own mind where your shadows dwell. These shadows are the parts of you that you have denied, suppressed, or feared to acknowledge. They are the impulses you hide, the emotions you reject, and the memories you pretend never existed. Society teaches us to show only what is acceptable, to wear masks that make us appear composed and in control. Yet beneath those masks there lies a hidden self, one that holds immense power, wisdom, and truth. Facing the inner shadows is not an act of shame, it is an act of courage. It is the willingness to look directly at what you once ran from and to say, "You too are a part of me." The shadow is not evil by nature. It is simply the part of the psyche that has been exiled. Every time you deny your anger, your jealousy, your sadness, or your vulnerability, you push it deeper into your unconscious mind. But what is buried does not disappear. It grows roots, influencing your actions and emotions in ways you do not understand. You might project it onto others, condemning in them what you cannot face within yourself. The person who irritates you, the situation that triggers you, the emotion you cannot control, they are all mirrors reflecting your unhealed parts. To rebuild yourself, you must stop fighting these reflections and begin to study them. This confrontation is never easy. The human instinct is to escape discomfort, to turn away from the darkness. But the truth is that what you avoid will continue to dominate you from the shadows. To become whole, you must bring the light of awareness into the places you fear most. You must ask yourself difficult questions. Why do I react this way? What am I trying to protect? What am I refusing to feel? In those questions lies the key to transformation. The shadow, once acknowledged, loses its power to control you. It transforms from an enemy into a teacher. Facing the inner shadows is a sacred confrontation with your own humanity. It strips away illusions of perfection and reveals the raw reality of being human. Fragile, flawed, but also capable of profound growth. When you meet your own darkness without judgment, you begin to understand others more deeply. You no longer see the world in terms of good and bad, right and wrong, but as a complex interplay of light and dark within every soul. Compassion arises naturally because you recognize in others the same struggle that exists within you. There is immense creative energy hidden in the shadow. The emotions you repress are not meant to be destroyed, they are meant to be integrated. Anger, when understood, becomes strength. Fear, when embraced, becomes intuition. Pain, when accepted, becomes wisdom. Every aspect of your shadow carries a gift, but it reveals itself only to those who dare to face it without turning away. Rebuilding yourself means reclaiming this lost energy. The parts of you that were silenced by shame, guilt, or fear. When you integrate them, you become more authentic, more whole, and more alive. This process requires honesty and patience. It is not something that happens in a single moment of insight, but through continuous reflection and self-observation. You may feel resistance. You may even fear that facing your shadows will destroy you. Yet the opposite is true. Denying your darkness is what keeps you fragmented. Acceptance is what heals you. As you bring each hidden emotion into the light, you reclaim a piece of your power. You stop living as a divided being and begin to exist as a unified self, aware, grounded, and complete. The world around you will begin to shift, because the world is only a reflection of your inner state. The people who once triggered you lose their control over your emotions. The patterns that once repeated in your life begin to dissolve. You no longer run from discomfort, you learn from it. You no longer project your pain outward, you own it and transform it. Facing the inner shadows is not about becoming perfect, it is about becoming real. It is the path through which the light of your consciousness penetrates the depths of your being, illuminating what was once hidden and restoring the balance between who you are and who you are meant to be. The journey of rebuilding yourself begins with the awakening of self-awareness. Without awareness, no change is real or lasting, because what remains unseen continues to control you. Awareness is not merely knowing your name, your job, or your story. It is the quiet and relentless observation of your thoughts, emotions, and actions without judgment. It is the ability to see yourself from within, to understand why you think the way you do, why you react to certain things, and why you continue to repeat certain patterns even when they hurt you. Most people live in a state of unconscious repetition, reacting to life rather than consciously engaging with it. Awareness breaks this cycle. It is the inner light that reveals what has been hidden in the dark. Self-awareness demands stillness. You cannot see your own reflection in disturbed water. In the same way, you cannot understand yourself while lost in constant noise, distraction, and external validation. To become aware is to stop running from silence and to sit with your inner world. This can be uncomfortable at first. The moment you become quiet, the suppressed emotions begin to surface: fear, guilt, longing, anger. But those emotions are not your enemies. They are messages from within, calling your attention to what needs healing. Awareness listens to those messages with patience, rather than trying to silence them. Through awareness, you begin to uncover the patterns that have shaped your life. You start to notice how certain experiences have built the beliefs that now limit you. You see that your behavior is often driven by old wounds, unfulfilled needs, or hidden insecurities. Awareness does not condemn these patterns, it simply shines a light on them. And in that light, they begin to lose their grip. When you can see your own conditioning clearly, you are no longer bound by it. You can choose differently. You move from being a victim of your unconscious habits to becoming the author of your own choices. Self-awareness also brings humility. The more you observe yourself, the more you realize how little you truly understand about your own depths. You begin to see that your mind is a landscape of contradictions, strength and weakness, love and resentment, courage and fear coexisting in delicate balance. This realization softens the heart. It removes the arrogance of certainty and opens the door to empathy, both for yourself and for others. You stop seeing your flaws as signs of failure and begin to recognize them as evidence of your complexity and humanity. Awareness is not a one-time revelation, it is a practice. It requires consistency. To watch yourself even when you are uncomfortable, to question your motives even when they appear noble, and to remain present even when the mind seeks escape. It means catching yourself in the moment of anger and asking what fear lies beneath it, or noticing your craving for attention and understanding the loneliness that drives it. Every act of observation strengthens your consciousness and weakens the grip of the unconscious forces that once ruled you. The beauty of awareness lies in its quiet power. It does not force change, it allows change to unfold naturally. When you become aware of your destructive habits, they begin to dissolve on their own, because they can no longer survive under the gaze of understanding. Awareness transforms pain into insight and confusion into clarity. It turns chaos into coherence, because it helps you see life as it truly is, not as your fears or desires imagine it to be. You stop fighting what is and start flowing with it, learning from every experience rather than resisting it. Through awareness, you come into alignment with truth. You no longer live under illusions created by your ego or society's expectations. You begin to recognize what genuinely matters to you, what gives your life meaning, and what drains it of vitality. Awareness becomes the compass of your soul, guiding you toward authenticity. It helps you discern between the voice of your intuition and the noise of your insecurities. It teaches you to act from understanding rather than impulse, from love rather than fear. When you rebuild yourself upon the foundation of awareness, every choice becomes conscious, every experience becomes a lesson, and every moment becomes a mirror reflecting your inner state. Awareness is the quiet revolution that changes everything without forcing anything. It is the gentle yet powerful awakening that turns the act of living into the art of becoming. Suffering has always been humanity's most faithful companion, yet it remains the most misunderstood. When pain enters life, the first instinct is to resist, to ask why, to see it as a punishment or a sign of failure. But suffering is not sent to destroy you. It is sent to awaken you. It strips away illusions and forces you to confront what you have avoided. When everything you depended on begins to fall apart, when your certainty turns to doubt and your comfort to confusion, you stand face to face with the raw truth of your existence. That confrontation is the beginning of transformation. The purpose hidden within suffering is not to make you despair, but to bring you closer to your inner strength, to what is unbreakable within you. Pain teaches what comfort cannot. When life moves smoothly, there is little reason to question anything. You drift along, assuming that stability means understanding. But when loss, failure, or heartbreak strikes, the foundations of that false security tremble. You begin to ask deeper questions. What am I really living for? What truly matters? Why do I seek what always slips away? These questions mark the beginning of awakening. Suffering shakes you awake from the sleep of routine. It reminds you that existence is not meant to be mechanical or numb. It forces you to look within rather than escape outward. The mind resists pain because it challenges control. It exposes the illusion that you are the master of everything that happens. Yet within that exposure lies freedom. When you stop fighting the storm, you begin to move with it. And in doing so, you discover a new kind of strength, one that does not depend on control, but on acceptance. This strength does not come from forcing outcomes, but from trusting the deeper rhythm of life, the one that uses even pain as a means of growth. Suffering also reveals your attachments. Every pain points to something you cling to, an idea, a person, a belief, a version of yourself. When that attachment is threatened or taken away, it hurts, but the pain is not punishment. It is the breaking of chains. You begin to see that peace cannot come from things that change, that no external possession or validation can provide lasting fulfillment. In this realization, suffering becomes a teacher. It whispers that freedom lies not in holding on, but in letting go. Through pain, empathy is born. When you suffer deeply, you begin to understand others on a level beyond words. The arrogance of judgment fades because you know how fragile the human heart truly is. You no longer see the world as a battle between the strong and the weak, but as a shared journey through the same ocean of uncertainty. Compassion arises naturally from that recognition. You see that every person carries invisible wounds, and you begin to treat them with the gentleness you once needed for yourself. Suffering can also become a mirror for meaning. Those who endure great pain often find themselves asking whether there is something greater behind it, a purpose, a lesson, a transformation waiting to emerge. When you stop asking, "Why me?" and begin asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" you shift from being a victim of pain to a student of it. Each hardship becomes an initiation, a necessary test that refines your spirit and deepens your awareness. You begin to see that life's challenges are not random cruelty, but invitations to evolve beyond who you were. There comes a point when suffering stops being something that happens to you and becomes something that happens for you. You start to recognize its sacred function. It dismantles false identities and brings you closer to truth. In the silence that follows pain, new understanding is born. You learn resilience, humility, patience, and gratitude, qualities that cannot be taught by comfort. What once broke you becomes the very force that rebuilds you. When you look back on the times you suffered most, you begin to realize that those were the moments when your soul was growing in ways you could not see. You were being shaped by an invisible hand, prepared for a deeper kind of peace that does not depend on external conditions. Suffering purifies the heart. It burns away the unnecessary, revealing what is essential. It teaches you to see beauty even in brokenness and to find meaning even in loss. The purpose of suffering is not to make you small, but to make you real, to awaken the light that can only emerge through the cracks of the soul. Within every human being, there exists a voice, quiet, patient and ancient, that calls from beneath the noise of the world. It is the voice of the authentic self, the part of you that has never been touched by fear, expectation, or imitation. Yet most people live far away from that voice, buried beneath layers of conditioning and social identity. From childhood, you are taught who to be, what to value, and how to behave in order to belong. You learn to silence your instincts and shape yourself into something acceptable. Slowly, you forget who you truly are. Rebuilding yourself means returning to that forgotten voice, the authentic self that has always been waiting beneath the surface, whispering to you even when you did not listen. The authentic self is not created, it is remembered. It was there before the masks, before the fears, before the opinions of others began to shape your sense of worth. But the world rewards conformity. It praises imitation and punishes originality. To survive, you adapt. You become what is needed to fit in, to please, to avoid rejection. You build an identity made of borrowed pieces, fragments of other people's expectations, stitched together into something that feels safe but false. This false self may succeed in gaining approval, but it can never bring peace. There is always a quiet restlessness, a sense that something essential has been lost. Listening to the call of the authentic self begins when you grow tired of pretending. It begins when the external rewards, attention, status, validation, lose their power to fulfill you. You start to sense that living for others' expectations has cost you your truth. This realization often arrives during moments of crisis or silence, when the old structures fall apart, and you are left alone with yourself. In that stillness, the authentic voice begins to speak again. It does not shout, it whispers. It asks simple but piercing questions. Who am I without my roles? What do I truly love? What do I fear losing most? The answers to these questions often come slowly, but once they appear, they change everything. The path back to authenticity requires courage. The false self fights for survival because it is built from the desire to be accepted. The moment you choose to follow your own truth, you risk disapproval. People who benefited from your conformity may resist your change. Yet the price of authenticity is always worth paying, because the cost of pretending is the slow death of the soul. To live authentically means to act, speak, and choose in harmony with your inner truth, even when that truth is misunderstood. It means allowing yourself to be vulnerable, imperfect, and real. The authentic self does not seek perfection. It seeks wholeness. Living from your authentic self feels like returning home after a long exile. You begin to notice how many of your desires were never truly yours. You see how often you said yes when you wanted to say no. How often you smiled when you were breaking inside. How many dreams you abandoned because they did not fit the world's definition of success. When you listen to your authentic voice, you begin to rebuild your life from the inside out. Decisions become clearer, not because they are easy, but because they are true. You stop asking what is right according to others and start asking what is real according to your soul. Authenticity is not rebellion for its own sake. It is alignment. It is not about rejecting the world, but about no longer betraying yourself for it. It means showing up fully, not as a version sculpted by fear, but as the unguarded essence of who you are. When you live this way, your presence becomes powerful because it is honest. You no longer need to impress or convince anyone. Your very being communicates truth. Others may not always understand you, but they will feel the strength that comes from someone who lives in integrity with themselves. Reconnecting with your authentic self also means forgiving yourself for the times you abandoned it. You did what you needed to survive, and that too was part of the journey. But now, awareness allows you to choose differently. You can shed the old masks and let your actions flow from sincerity rather than performance. You can speak your truth without apology, love without calculation, and create without imitation. The authentic self thrives in honesty, creativity, and connection. As you begin to live from this inner center, life takes on a different texture. You start to attract experiences and people that resonate with your truth, rather than your facade. You find peace not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. The call of the authentic self is the call to return to wholeness, to remember the voice that was always yours, and to rebuild your life around its quiet but unwavering truth. Every human life is a story in motion, and each person is both the protagonist and the author of that unfolding tale. To rebuild yourself is to realize that you are not merely living out a script written by others, family, culture, past experiences, but that you hold the power to rewrite it. Most people move through life repeating patterns inherited from those who came before them, unaware that they are acting out a myth they never chose. To awaken is to see this clearly, that your life has always been guided by symbols, beliefs, and desires that shape how you interpret the world. When you become conscious of this inner narrative, you can begin to reshape it. You become the creator of your own myth, giving meaning to every trial and triumph, weaving purpose into the chaos of existence. The story of your life is not fixed. It shifts every time you change your perspective. When you see yourself only as a victim of circumstance, your story becomes one of helplessness. But when you choose to see your struggles as initiation, as challenges that shape your strength and expand your awareness, you transform the same experiences into a heroic journey. This shift does not change what happened to you, but it changes what those experiences mean. Meaning is the true power of creation. You rebuild yourself when you take ownership of meaning, when you no longer let life's events define you, but instead define what they signify within your own myth. Becoming the creator of your own myth requires imagination, honesty, and courage. Imagination allows you to envision possibilities beyond the limits of your current identity. Honesty forces you to face the illusions that have kept you trapped in roles that no longer serve your growth. Courage gives you the strength to step beyond them, to rebuild yourself. You must be willing to destroy the old narrative, the one that says you are not enough, that your destiny is already decided. That life is something that happens to you rather than through you. Only then can you write a new chapter that reflects who you truly are becoming. There is immense creative energy in human consciousness, but most of it remains dormant because people mistake survival for living. They repeat the same choices, follow the same routines, and remain confined within the myth of limitation. Yet within each soul burns the same force that drives the universe to create galaxies and stars, the impulse to express, to expand, to evolve. When you rebuild yourself, you align with that impulse. You stop existing as a byproduct of external influence and start acting as a conscious creator. Every thought, every intention, every action becomes a brushstroke in the grand painting of your life. The act of authorship begins with awareness of symbolism. Life speaks in symbols, through dreams, coincidences, emotions, and relationships. When you begin to interpret these signs not as random events, but as messages from your deeper self, you start to understand the mythic structure beneath your experiences. The people who enter your life are not accidents. They are characters sent to teach you, to mirror your strengths and your shadows. The obstacles you face are not curses. They are the dragons that guard your treasure, demanding transformation before reward. Seeing life this way turns suffering into initiation and confusion into discovery. The Creator's path is not about control, but about participation. You cannot dictate every detail of life's unfolding, but you can choose how to dance with it. You can decide the attitude with which you face adversity, the grace with which you handle loss, and the gratitude with which you receive joy. Each of these choices adds depth to your myth. The beauty of being human lies in this paradox. You are both shaped by life and shaping it at the same time. You are the sculptor and the clay, the dreamer and the dream. When you reclaim authorship of your life, you begin to see that destiny is not a fixed line, but a living dialogue between your soul and the universe. Every experience becomes meaningful when you frame it as part of your mythic journey. Failure becomes a lesson in humility, loneliness becomes a test of strength, and success becomes a call to responsibility. You learn that there is no final arrival point, only continuous evolution. To rebuild yourself is to keep rewriting your story with greater depth, wisdom, and authenticity in the end. Every soul seeks to create a story that mirrors its truth. The myths we build are not fantasies, but expressions of our deepest reality. When you become the conscious author of your own myth, you no longer seek validation from the outside world. You live from purpose, not from fear. You walk through life aware that every moment, no matter how small or painful, is a sentence in the sacred book of your becoming. Becoming someone new. It is about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Every fall, every wound, every dark night of the soul was never your enemy. It was your invitation to rise in awareness, to return to the strength that has always lived within you. The journey of rebuilding is not a straight path. It is a spiral, leading you deeper into your own truth each time you break and heal again. You are not the same person who once stumbled in fear. You are wiser, braver, and more complete because of what you've endured. So, when life tears down the walls you've built, do not curse the storm. It only comes to clear the way for something truer to emerge. Stand tall in your becoming. Trust the process of your own transformation, for even in your weakest moments, life is shaping you into something extraordinary. May you find the courage to face your shadows, the strength to rise from your ashes, and the wisdom to create your own light. I wish you peace, clarity, and endless growth on your journey ahead. Good luck, and thank you for listening.